Ches. Because in this day, the Hashem will atone for you, to purify you. In other words, Yom Kippur. Before Hashem, you will become purified. It's explained concerning this Nukut Torah of our Parsha, which the Rebbe calls the Chassidische Parsha Shel HaShavua, the Chassidische Torah portion that the Rebbe says, just like one has to review the Torah portion of the week, so too a person has to review the Chassidische Torah portion, which is the Chassidus, the Maimer in L'chutei Torah or Torah of that week. The Lifnei Havaya, what does it mean? Lifnei Havaya, in the simple sense, Lifnei Havaya means in the presence of Havaya. But the way the Alter Rebbe explains is Pirushe Lifnei, prior to. Pirushe L'mayla M'shem Havaya, its meaning is beyond the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. That's where the Kapara, that's where the atonement of Yom Kippur comes from. Maybe and the Alter Rebbe brings down the Inyan HaTshuva. What's the concept of Tshuva? Ha'ashav nafshi elokis l'makar chutzvah k'may sh'hoysa koydim mishtalshos v'yiritz hamadregis l'olam hazad l'slabish b'gufad magashmi. That Tshuva is to return his godly soul to its source where it was hewn out from, the way it was before the chain order descent and before the descent of all the levels that it came down to this world to become enclosed in the physical body of a human being. Sha'oz, prior to that descent, it was part of and included in the source and the root of all the worlds, the infinite light of Hashem. After its descent and the chain order of levels, it was changed from one level to another level. It descended to become enclosed in the body of a person in this world. Therefore, there's a need to return the neshama to its source the way it was prior to its descent. To elevate his soul to Hashem, so to be cleaving to the living God, that should be part of the infinite light of Hashem, like it was initially. The Rebbe says, we could say, the fact, what the Maimer explains, that the content of the idea of Tshuva is to return his soul to its source. That is to also explain what it says over here concerning Tshuva, that where is the Tara coming from? It comes from a level that is before and higher than Shem Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. What it says in the Maimer, that the root of the neshama is the infinite light of Hashem. We could say that the intention is to the infinite light of Hashem. That's beyond Shem Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. In other words, when he talks about the source where it comes from, it doesn't explicitly identify it as higher than Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. It only talks about Tshuva being higher than Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. But when he goes to start talking about the Shoresh of the Neshama coming from the Ein Sof, he's implying this same level is where the Tshuva is. This is the same level where the Neshama came from. How does this imply it? Because since the idea of Tshuva is to return his soul to its source and its root, Nimtza comes out top of the next page. It's to return the nefesh higher than Shem Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. Therefore, it says over here by Tshuva before Havaya, higher than Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. The Tshuva is the return of the soul higher than Shem Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. So from one aspect of the Maimer, we can understand the other aspect, and that is that the source comes from Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. That's why the Tshuva, which is about returning, is also receiving from the level of higher than Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. So now the Rebbe is going to explain what does it mean about the tshuva being higher than Yud Kei Vav Kei. That's one topic, but the idea that the shoyrish of the neshama is higher than Yud Kei Vav Kei will be the Indian explanation this matter. That the root of the neshama is higher than the name Yud Kei Vav Kei. We say every morning, the neshama that you placed within me is pure. And then after the level of tahira, there's ata barasa, you created her chulum. This means before the creation, the neshama itself, before the level of ata barasa, you created her. That is the level where it is pure. This level that it is pure is beyond any type of it's a level of godliness that's beyond the whole idea of the creation of the world, because it's saying ata barasa, you created it, and before you created, there's a level of tahira. So that means the concept of tahira precedes any level of having to do with the creation of the world. But not only that, it is also higher than the level of godliness that brings the world into being. So not only is it higher than the actual existence of the world, than the world being created, but it's also higher than the level of godliness that brings the world into existence. And this itself is even higher than the highest level of godliness that brings the world into existence, as he will explain now the different levels that there is in godliness, nalakus, that brings the world into existence. And the godliness that brings the world into existence, there are many levels. There's a level of godliness that's mamish associated and connected with the world. That's the name Elokim. Like it says in the pasuk, that in the beginning, Elokim created. So in other words, Shem Elokim has to do with the creation. That is the more hands-on level. That's the level that's mamish involved directly in the Isavos. Then there is a stage more removed, but still connected to the Isavos. There's a level of godliness that's not completely associated with the world. It's a level of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Also, this level of Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei, that it doesn't have mamish in association with the world, it still has some type of connection with the world. Shari Nikra Havaya. Why is it called Havaya? Al Shem Shemahaves Oilam, because it is something that brings the world into existence. So even the name Yud Kei Vav Kei is associated with the level of the world coming into being. And we also see a pasuk that supports that Shem Havaya is involved in the creation, because in addition to what we said before, Bereshis Bar Elokim, that Shem Elokim is involved in creation, it also says, Uchsiv, it says in the day that Havaya and Elokim made the heavens and the earth, showing the making of earth and heaven is associated not only with the name Elokim, like it says at the beginning, Bereshis Bar Elokim, Elagam L'Shem Havaya, it's associated also to the name Yud Kei Vav Kei. So based on what we said before, that the neshama is not just higher than the creation of the world, but it's higher from the godliness that's involved in the creation of the world. And it's higher even than the highest level of godliness that's associated with the creation of the world. So he says in line 24, Mazen Nimsa, from this comes out, so the fact that the neshama's root is in the level that is pure, that's beyond you created her. This means it's not just higher in the world itself, and not just higher from the godliness that makes the world, which is Shem Elokim. It's higher even than the name Yud Kei Vav Kei. Because also the name Yud Kei Vav Kei is associated with the idea of the world coming into being, and the neshama is Tahirahi, higher than anything having to do with Atabaros. 2 lines from the bottom, line 30. And the explanation of this matter even more in depth. In Yadua, it's known, Shem Havayu, Shem Ha'etzem, V'Shem HaMefurish, V'Shem HaMiyuchad. The name of Yud Kei Vav Kei is Hashem's essential name, and his explicit name, and his unique name, because all the other names of Hashem, whether Kael and Elikim, etc., can be used for other things, like Elikim is used for Dayanim, etc., or could sometimes be used Elikim Acherim, etc. Shem Havaya is the only name that's unique to only Hashem. Meaning that the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei, top of page Zayin, V'hainu Shu Hashem Achin Naila, that the name Yud Kei Vav Kei is the highest, most name of Hashem. V'lechein tzarich loymar, therefore we have to say, Shemash Shem Havaya Shayach L'inyan HaYisavos, the fact that the name Yud Kei Vav Kei is associated with the idea of the world coming into being. Harei ze rak mipnei shu Shem belvad v'lo ha'etzem. If we are saying that the name Yud Kei Vav Kei is so special, so unique, so how does it have to do with the level of the creation? True, it's the highest level of godliness that has to do with creation. But how does it have to do with creation? The reason why it has to do with creation is because after all the amazing things about the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, it's still only a name. And the name is not the essence. So he says on line 4, but this will be understood the depth of the matter. That the root of neshama is no level that is pure. Beyond the name Yud Kei Vav Kei that's associated with the coming into being of the world. Because the root of the neshama is in Hashem's very essence. That it's higher than any types of names and any types of revelations. That's how high Tahirahi has no connection with any types of emanations, revelations, or names of Hashem. Line 9, the new paragraph. Now this idea that we return the soul to its root. It's an idea of an ascent for the neshama. Because we're going that the idea that neshama has the idea of tshuva. Tshuva means returning to its source and its root. So it's not just that, okay, it started by, let's say, square one, and it went down. Now tshuva, it's returning to square one. It's not that way. We must say that tshuva is going to be an ascent, an elevation, even higher than what it had before it descended, which was higher than names, higher than Yud Kei Vav Kei, the level of Tahirahi, the ultimate level, and still in all, now through doing tshuva, it reaches even higher. So the Rebbe explains line 11, the Kudus Abir Bezeh, the point of the explanation this is, the fact that even prior to this, the neshama was rooted in Hashem's essence. It's the way the neshama is above. The fact that we're returning the soul afterwards, after it came down, and now it has to do tshuva. The intention and purpose in this is also the way the neshama finds itself down here below. Neshama melubeshes beguf, a soul enclosed in a body. Despite that, even in this level itself, the way it's in a physical body, it will reach that the spirit will return to the Eibishter that gave it. In other words, that before it came down here, it only had that association with the Hoyrehi, with the Eir Sof, without being limited by a physical body. Here the Chiddush is, coming down into a body, it will still have that level of Tahor. The Rebbe explains why who the concept behind this is. This idea that the return of the soul to its root. comes about through the service of the neshama down here below. That the neshama makes for Hashem a home down here below. The content of the matter of making the world into a home for Hashem, this means that even down here below, Hashem's essence should shine without any types of constrictions. Just like in the literal, simple home of a person. The very person himself is what lives in the home, not like when he's a guest somewhere where he's not there with his whole entire being. There's things that he's not going to do because he's a guest in someone's house, etc. So too, it's in the fact that the world becomes a home for the Eibishter, that also down here below becomes revealed Hashem's very essence, without any types of constrictions. Like it says, that your master and teacher will not anymore be covered over. It's explained in Tanya and at length in many places. Top of page Ches, he will not cover himself anymore. He will not hide himself with any types of covering, any types of garment. So this is the idea of Hashem living down here, Hashem having a home down here, that the very essence of Hashem, without any concealments, comes down here. So therefore, just like when a person's service is that brings down Hashem's essence without any concealments, through this service, the neshama draws down Hashem's very essence. Down here below, through this becomes also an ascent in the neshama itself. It's quid pro quo. It's the same idea. You're drawing down Hashem's very essence, so its return is to the root in Hashem's very essence. Moving for this understood. The fact that the neshama returns to its root. We're talking about that the neshama returns to its root the way it's down here and clothed in a body. The fact that the neshama drew down Hashem's essence, its drawing down is down here below. So therefore, since the drawing down of Hashem is down here below in the physical world with physical bodies and physical things, so therefore, what the neshama attains is in a similar vein. Therefore, also the reward that the neshama attains through this and for this avodah, who gamkin al derech zeh, is also in a similar manner. That should be the spiritual return to Hashem that gave it. Gam that its return is also down here below. Neshama melubeshes beguf, a soul enclosed in the body, just like Hashem's coming down is down here below in this physical world. Now we can understand what the neshama gains over its return to its previous state in comparison to what it was in its previous state. That's the ascent that occurs in the neshama through its descent in the body. Also on this level, that the neshama is found down here and clothed in a body. In this physical world, niya etzla, the neshama attains and occurs to it. The spirit will return to the Eibishter that gave it. Now in this ascent, there are two components to it. One idea is the fact that also, and despite, as we'll soon explain, of the neshama being down here below, it's returning to cleaving in Hashem's very essence. The spirit will return to the Eibishter that gave it. This indicates the most powerful bond in Hashem's essence, that it's able to attain that and retain that connection even far away. This is similar to, obviously it's not the exact same thing, that the Tanya explains concerning a sin. Even during a sin, the Nefesh Elokis was faithful to the Eibishter. Both the word amna indicating devoted and faithful and with him, indicates on the powerful bond that remains and that neshama still has with Hashem during an Aveira Chas v'Sholom. Moving to this understood also concerning the descent of neshama down here below. The fact that also down here below we are able to reach and have that the spiritual return to the Eibishter gave it. It indicates on the powerful bond of the neshama and Hashem's essence, which the neshama and we and the world and the Olamas and the Malachim were not aware of until it was brought out to the fore down here in this world. That is one advantage that happens when the neshama dafke down here below reaches this level. The Inyan Sheni and other aspects of the Aliyah over the neshama way it was prior to descending. Beforehand, it was only the neshama that had this connection. The body didn't have any of this connection. But now, through this avodah of ruach tashav elokim asher, while being down here in the body, this influences and affects the body. And the way how it influences and affects the body is not in such a way that the body becomes nullified, but rather the way the body remains a body. Top of page test. All of the neshama influences it. The fact that he makes, like the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, his body ancillary and auxiliary, and the soul becomes primary. This is the accomplishment of the neshama down here that it didn't have prior to descending into this world. So the Rebbe continues in line 3. We can connect this what's explained in the Torah of Parshas Kedoshim. It's the Chassidische Torah portion of the second Torah portion this week. On the pasuk, when you come to the land and you will plant every fruit tree, seemingly it's not understood. The order of this mitzvah of our law, etc., is in the order of going from below, from the lowest type of level, seemingly working his way up. Initially, there's 3 years where it's completely oral, it's completely blocked off. Turning away from bad, it's then we go up to a higher level. In the fourth year, it's holy praises for Hashem. He eats it in Shalayim. It's similar to eating on Shabbos and Yom Tov. That's a mitzvah. So you're going up to a higher level. If so, how do we go? It's not understood. Why in the 5th year are you allowed to eat the fruit everywhere, even in a mundane type of manner? The majority of a person's eating is during the weekday, not on Shabbos and Yom Tov. It doesn't follow this progression of going from the lowest level to the highest level. The highest level seems to be the 4th year when we have to eat it in Yerushalayim. So how did the 5th year become higher than that when we're talking about mundane eating?